Welcome to TRS Clips. It's for all you guys whose attention spans are reduced because of short form content. This is the highlights channel. Enjoy the video and make sure you consume a bunch of highlights. Binge watch TRS Clips. Do you believe in this whole consciousness revolution that apparently happened? I think it was in 25,000 BCE, where suddenly culture started developing. I think I read about it in Sapiens, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
think cultures started developing far earlier than that.
Okay.
If you look at prehistoric cave paintings, not only in India, but around the world, and the way they flourished, right? There is a beautiful mind that is creating them. So I think humans and their mind and their intellectual power, their knowledge, their thirst for newer experiences existed right when they started hunting, I think. You know, to hunt an animal that looks much bigger than you takes a lot of guts. You know, even if it is a herbivore, for that matter, even if you're hunting like a grass eating animal, but it's larger than you, it's stronger than you, it's probably a herd animal. Most herbivores are herd animals. But for man to think that I'm going to kill this and I'm going to eat this while he is with his friends is a grand idea. So consciousness, I think, developed very, very early on. But this is just my personal opinion.
What is this theory though? Because I think even Graham Hancock has spoken about this on Joe Rogan's podcast. He said that he's attributed this expansion of the human mind to psychedelics like ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, these things. I've had both experiences. I've had an ayahuasca experience. I've had a psilocybin experience with shamans. I felt like a different person after both. And I can totally understand where this theory comes from because I've seen the changes in my own mind. Higher levels of self-assurance, higher levels of creativity, etc. I'm not recommending that people go for these things. But in saying that, I want to ask you if you believe that psychedelics have actually played a role in the human experience.
So in India, for example, you're a yoga practitioner, right? Consciousness is the main thing that a lot of yoga practice helps expand, tap into. Breathing exercises clear your mind. Breathing exercise and certain yoga varieties can open up your mind and take you to transformative, transcendental, meditative states, right? If you breathe pure oxygen for 10 minutes, you could get high, right? So talking about just consciousness and expanding that, certainly if you have the right aid, you could do that. Man has been doing that for a long time, whether it's using drugs or whether it's using just air around you and your body practice. Other than that, when you go to the text, when you do a havan, for example, in Hindu rituals, we have a havan. And we put water, Ganga Jal, you offer it to the gods and stuff like that. There was a term that was used for it called soma, right? There are certain brands that are called Soma right now. But Soma was considered by most scholars, and I say scholars, not only high scholars here in India, but also Indologists. Indology, by the way, is the study of India through its primary texts. You do not study about India from anything else other than what was written in India by the person, not his scribe, but by the person.
Which is what? Like which
Shastras,
texts?
right? Yoga Sutra, Manusmriti, all the sadhana manuals, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata are actually other kind of texts. They are like prose and poetry essentially, but philosophical text, deeply philosophical texts that came out from Kashmiri Shaivism, from Banaras, from South India, you know, so many texts. I mean, if you go to the National Archives of India and you see the library of texts just in 1 century period, okay, take 9 to 10 century, and you see the variety that came out from Hindu, and forget Hinduism, Shaivism, Brahmanism, Vaishnavism, Shakta, Buddhist, Jainas, just their variety of texts. So I studied Indology, right? I went to the University of Oxford, did an MPhil in classical Indian religion, where my main study was reading Sanskrit and translating manuscripts over there. So when you study that and you see human philosophy, like the philosophy that came out of India, it was mind-bogglingly deep. I cannot tell you, Ranvi. I used to come out of my classes and my brain was exhausted because in one shloka, the depth that it took you to the human mind of understanding your consciousness, this whole practice, if you just go into Indian texts of understanding consciousness, of breaking it down, unpacking it, it will blow your mind.
Like, for example, what? Like, in terms of, I'm sure this happened at least 5 years ago.
My Oxford, it happened 2015,
7 years.
7-8 years
So
ago.
in 7 years, you've got time
Not
to.
even 2015, I'm sorry, 2013. Shit, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Man, I'm old.
But those things you studied, I'm sure they've stayed in your head. You've
Oh
lived
yes,
out life.
they are my life's principles essentially. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scholars is this scholar called Abhinava Gupta from Kashmir. He functioned in the 9th, 10th century. He wrote very important books called the Tantra Sara and the Tantra Loka. He talked about Shaivism. He was a worshipper of Lord Shiva.
Is he alive?
He functioned in the 9th, 10th century.
Oh.
Yeah, in
Okay.
Kashmir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gupta sounds like a modern
Yeah,
surname.
Abhinava Gupta. No. He is very different than that.
Go on.
But he wrote this text, and this is what I studied when I was at Oxford. We were translating this text, and he talked about Kashmiri Shaivism. Kashmiri Shaivism, what is Shaivism? Shaivism is the worship of the cult of Shiva and all his associated deities, Ganesha, Parvati, all of that. And in that, he formulated a theory. I'm not going to get into it right now because it's too deep. And also, one needs to understand how does one practice and study their religion. You have to be initiated into it. There are different ways, right? But he came up with this theory of the Trika Shaivism, right? Where he placed the female identity very much at the center of the male identity. Okay, now let's take, this is a philosophy, okay? This is the mind. Now let's look at material culture, what things we can see, tangible things. If you see an Indic structure, it is generally pyramidal in nature, never square. Do you ever see a square temple in India? No. Even Buddhist temple, Bodh Gaya, it's triangular, almost phallic. There is another kind of temple that is called the Yogini temple or the female temple. You know how it is? It is circular. The Parliament of India, you've seen the Parliament building, it's circular. It is designed after the Yogini temple. The Yogini temple is circular and the male temple is phallic. And that is the union that leads to creation. You see, this is a philosophy that India made into 3D. Now, when we look at these temples around us, right, you look at any important temple, okay? If you look at the South Indian temples, you look at the East Indian temples, you look at the West Indian temples, you look at the Jaina temples, which are, they don't have so many gods and goddesses outside them, but they are highly geometrical, psychedelically geometrical. But each design has a very vital meaning of philosophy behind it. You look at the Khajuraho temples. We talk about the Khajuraho temples a lot, you know, the imagery out there. The Khajuraho, they have nothing on the Odisha temples. If you go to Konark, the vantage point of the absolutely outrageous sexual imagery that exists on that and the angle that you can see it from and what the sculptor is making you see and why is it outside and not inside the temple, there's very deep meaning behind it. And
is the deep meaning that sex is just a fringe layer of life, and then as you go in,
sex leads to creation, number one. And yes, sex is part of normal life, everyday life. So what you see outside the temple is essentially a cosmology of activities, of gods, of goddesses, of Maithuna couples, you know, couples in amorous love and all of that. It is a representation, A, of our society, but B, also of a universe that churns the ocean in such a way that leads to the austerity of the central sanctum inside a temple. When you go to the very central sanctum inside the temple, you'll see it is the most simple, the most unadorned space. You know, it looks like a kutia. You know, like how old houses may have been, completely no design, just a deity in the center and a deep in front of it. Why? It is because when you look outside, the grandness of it leads you inside to the silence of the God, right? But you look at Greece, for example, you could be standing right in the center of the Parthenon, right, which has pillars, 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 but you feel like you can't see it. You have to go far and see it. That's when you see the entire cosmology of it. But in an Indian temple, for example, you have to keeps drawing you in, because outside there is this replete imagery, but there's so much that you have to come close and focus on it. And once you focus on it and you go around, what do? What is the ritual of going to a temple? You go to a temple, you bow your head, you look for a Ganesha statue, you put your right shoulder to the Ganesha statue, and then you go around the temple. Once you go around and circumambulate, this is the process of circumambulation. You go around the temple, then you go inside the temple. Then you spend a moment in the mandapa of the temple, that is the outside terrace of the inside inner sanctum. You stand there, you pray to the God, घंटी बजाओ, God जग जाएंगे. फिर तुम अंदर जाओ. You go inside and then you pray to the God. What is the main thing that you do while you're praying to the God? You do darshan. Right? They always say, I'm going to do darshan. What is darshan? You look at the eyes of the God. When a temple is made, for example, the last ritual that is done to open the temple to the public is incising the eyes of the God, because you are supposed to look into the eyes of the God and make your prayers. That is for the common man. The initiate, however, and depends on the level of initiates, right, has a different form of practice as well. And depends on the realm that you are from. Are you a Shakta? Are you a Shaiva? Are you a Vaishnava? Do you say Jai Shri Ram? Do you say Om Namah Shivaya? Or do you say Ma,
Thank you for watching. Our team spends a lot of time curating playlists just for you. So make sure you check out all the playlists that we've created on TRS Clips if you want to speed up your learning process.